Solving a right triangle. All right, at this point, we've done quite a few topics on trigonomic functions. So sine, cosine, or tangent. So off to the right side, I have my 3 trigonomic functions. And then at the top here, this is just a saying to help you remember. So SOHCAHTOA, it's kind of a silly thing, but it helps you remember the order. So you just SOH because sine is opposite hypotenuse. CA, which is CAH, cosine adjacent hypotenuse. TOA for TOA, tangent opposite adjacent. So again, it's just meant to help you remember the order without having to write them out fully, because you could just write this out so you remember which ones you're using for each, because it is a little hard to remember just off the top of your head when you're thinking about it. And then we also have the 2 diagrams here so that you remember opposite means opposite the angle we're talking about, whichever angle they're asking us about. Hypotenuse is always across from the 90. And adjacent is the segment that connects the angle and the 90 degree. So it's always kind of in between there. That's the segment that we call adjacent. And it depends on which angle you're looking at for which one is opposite and which one is adjacent. So if we're looking at this bottom angle, then opposite is on the side, adjacent is on the bottom. But if I look at it the other way, from the top, opposite is on the bottom, adjacent is on the side. So we have to be careful on which one we're looking at. And make sure we label them accordingly. So the way that I make sure I do it when I'm doing the problem here is we're actually going to work out the a missing side at this point. We're going to find, and when it says solve, I'm going to scroll down here. Solve means it wants you to find all the pieces, because it doesn't actually show you that up here, but on the next page it'll have the spaces to fill in, so it'll have a little bit more information. But solve the triangle means fill in all the pieces you don't have. So we don't have angle A, we don't have side B, and we don't have side A or side B. So what you want to do is you want to start going through and filling this out. First, all triangles add up to 180 degrees. Every single triangle, no matter how you draw it. So if I have 2 angles, all I have to do is subtract those 2 angles from 180, and what that'll tell me is what's left over for angle A. So, and I'm going to combine these really quick because that's a little easier to subtract this way. So I'm going to go 4, and so if I combine 90 and 44, I get 134, and I can subtract that a little easier this way. So I get 6 and 4 and 0. So I get 46. So this is 46 degrees, which I do believe if we scroll down, that's exactly what they had here, 46 degrees. So now we want to start looking at opposite at our trigonomic functions. So we have 44, but we don't have side B. So I want to use opposite, and I'm just going to use 44 in this case. So I know I want to use opposite for 44. So I'm going to write 44 equals, and I know I want opposite. No matter which one you use, opposite is on the top. So I'm going to write opposite. Oh, I'm not going to write opposite. I'm just going to write the actual number. This one doesn't let me undo, darn it. Okay. So the opposite is B. And I want to use, since I'm using opposite, I either want to use sine, which is hypotenuse on the bottom, or tangent, which is adjacent on the bottom. So I do have my hypotenuse. So if I go across here, I have my hypotenuse. And this is if I'm just looking at 44. And it wouldn't matter if I'm looking at 46, hypotenuse is actually going to be the same. And this is my opposite, which makes this other one my adjacent. So now I have these labeled when we're looking at angle 44. If we switch to look at angle 46, opposite and hypotenuse opposite and adjacent will switch. So I don't want to use adjacent because that's an A. I don't want to have 44 equals B over A. So that tells me that I want to use sine. So I'm going to use sine. So I didn't fill this in yet because we were still trying to decide which trigonomic function I'm using. So sine of 44 degrees equals B over hypotenuse, which we marked as 18. So now when we have B on the top, or any letter on the top, what we have to do is this little movement here, like this. So we have to multiply by 18 in order to cancel these out, because times divide, they cancel. So now I want to grab my calculator here. Oops. Just have to click on it correctly. All right, so I'm going to bring this calculator up here. Let's close this color bar so that I can actually use a calculator. So I have 18 times sine of 44. And the calculator understands that you're going to do sine of 44 and then multiply that by 18. And I can hit equals. And it'll tell me that B has to be 12.503850. So they want us to round to a tenth. So they want us to round off to 12.5. As long as the number right after is 4 or smaller, that rounds off to what you already have. If it's 5 or bigger, it rounds up to the next number. So we have 12.5 for B. So this is all we're going to do is just fill it in and see what we get. So let's go ahead and clear this and actually start the next page here so we can see what's going on. So first, let's fill in angle A because that's generally the easiest one here to fill in. So let's go with a different color so that I'm not using the same colors that are over here. So remember, they all add up to 180 degrees, and I'm going to use subtract what I'm already using. So I'm already using 90 and 42. If I add 90 and 42 together, I get 2 and 1, 3. So I get 132 if I add these two together. And I'm going to subtract. So I have 7, 10, 8, 4. So I get 48. So this is going to be 48 degrees, and I'll fill that in just a moment. All right, so I already have that filled in. So now I'm going to focus on 42, just so that I can have this labeled all for one. So I'm going to go opposite 42, and I'm going to label this opposite. And then I'm going to go hypotenuse. Remember, that's always across from the 90. So this is my hypotenuse. And then adjacent connects the angle and the 90-degree. It's also the one that's not hypotenuse or opposite. So if you have opposite and hypotenuse labeled correctly, it's the other side, which is another way to think of that. So now I'm going to start filling this out. So I'm going to go opposite because I know I have my opposite. So I'm going to use opposite. So I'm either going to use sine or tangent. I just need to wait a second before I actually decide sine or tangent to figure out which one I want. So opposite and then hypotenuse, that'll get me C. Opposite and adjacent, that'll get me A. So I'm actually going to do both. So let's go ahead and go with sine first. So sine is opposite, which is 14, over hypotenuse, which is C. All right, so now we have one little extra step because I have to multiply by C on both sides to move C out from underneath here. And then, because I don't want to know what C times sine of 42 is, I want to know just what C is. I have to divide both sides by sine of 42. So I know this is going to look funny because I canceled those out, but I'm dividing by sine of 42 on this side. So I have 14 divided by sine of 42. Sine of 42 divided by sine of 42. These cancel just like any other number. So C equals, and let's go ahead and grab our calculator. Close the color wheel here. Close. All right. So I have 14 divided by sine of 42. So this is what I want it to look like. Equals, and this is 20.92267. It keeps going on, and we want to round to a tenth. So I'm going to highlight it to a tenth. I'm going to look at the number that's right past it. That's a 2. So 4 or smaller means that it's going to stay 20.9. It's not going to go up to 20.10, which actually means that it would be, because if you go up to 10 from the 9, then it would be 21. So you have to carry that over. 20.9. Okay. So let's go ahead and go back to our drawing board here. So I'm going to put 20.9 in here. And I'm going to close the calculator for a moment. Okay. So now we're going to write another trigonomic function. Remember, we had kind of already said we're going to use both of these. Because we already have our opposite. We don't want to use 20.9, even though we know that C is 20.9. We rounded that. Don't use a rounded amount in your calculations unless you have to use that amount, because otherwise it may not be the answer that Alex was looking for because it was rounded. So if you use one that's not rounded, that's fine. Like if it was just a flat answer and it wasn't rounded at all, that's fine. But if you have to round, do not use that one. Use the one you were given. So we were given the other one, so I know it's tangent of 42, and I'm using tangent because I'm going to go opposite over adjacent, which is A. So I have to do that same little thing where I went times A, the A's cancel out, but I don't want to know this. I want to divide by 42. So when the variable's on the bottom, you're going to divide the number by the trigonomic function and the angle. When the variable's on the top, you're going to multiply the number by the trigonomic function. So it just depends on which one you're given. In this case, we were both given fractions where you have to do this little jump. All right, so let's move this over here. I've got to move things around here because my writing messes things up a little bit. So 14 divided by tangent of 42. Oop, and I got to make sure I take that out. I didn't realize that was still in there when I started typing. Equals. So we want to round to a tenth. So this number right past the tenth is 4. 4 or smaller means that it's going to stay 15.5, and this is going to be 48. I hadn't typed that in yet, so let's check. And, uh-oh, what did I do? Round to the nearest tenth. That is what I did. All right, let's check it one more time. I think I wanted in degree. Did I accidentally mess up the calculator here? 14 by 14 divided by 20.9. That should be fine. What do they not like about that? Oh, I did change it. That's why. So that's actually one of those things I wanted to say degree here. So let's see, or at least that's how my other calculator is. Let's make sure. So we have 14 divided by sine of 42. No, I definitely don't want it like that. Oh, you know what? Silly, silly mistake. I typed my numbers into the wrong spaces. So this should be 15.5, and this one down here should be 20.9. That was just a dorky mistake there. All right, so that's just paying attention to where you're typing. So that was just my oops. We did all the calculations correctly, and the calculator is working just fine. It was just me not paying attention where I'm typing things. All right. So let's go ahead and find our missing angle here. So remember that all triangles add up to 180. I'm using 90 and 40. So if I add those together, I get 130, and I subtract. This tells me what I have left over for A. So A is 50 degrees. All right, so remember, we always want to go from the angle that we were given. You can go from the 50, but I'm going to go from the 40 because we were given that one already. So I'm going to go opposite. Label this. Hypotenuse is across from the 90 always. And adjacent is either, you can think of it as the one that's left over, or it's the segment that connects the 90 and the angle. So I get adjacent here. All right. So let's go ahead and start filling these ones out. So we know we want to find B, side B, and side C. I have adjacent, so that tells me that I'm going to use cosine and tangent. I'm probably going to use both here, because I need to find both opposite and hypotenuse. So it doesn't really matter which one we start off with. Let's go ahead and start with cosine. So cosine of angle 40, and I don't know if I explained this when this one started, but this is just, I'm hoping I'm not saying this wrong, theta, angle theta. So it's just an angle mark. So if you don't know your angle, that's kind of what they fill it in with. But if we know our angle, we put the 40 in there. Equals, so cosine is adjacent, which is 24, over hypotenuse, which is c. So same thing as the last one. We multiply, and then we divide by cosine of 40. So we have this little two-step process here. So we have c equals, and we're going to grab our calculator here. And so it's going to be 24 divided by cosine of 40 equals, so we get 31.3. They want us to round to a tenth, so we just need to make sure that is in fact less than 4, so 31.3 is perfectly fine. So this is side B. Nope, sorry, this is side C. So 31.4. 0.3, darn it. Almost rounded that on accident. All right, so now we're going to find side B. So now we're going to use tangent because that's the only other one that uses adjacent. Even though now we have side C, and we know that one is 31.3, we rounded that answer. So we don't want to use a rounded answer. So tangent of 40 equals opposite, which is B, over adjacent, which is 24. And this is a B, not a 6. So now all we have to do, since B is on the top, this actually makes it a little easier. We multiply both sides by 24. 24s cancel. So B equals, all we have to do is work this out on our calculator here. So let's see, we have, whoops, didn't mean to close calculator. Clear, we have 24. Let's see, if I close this color wheel, that'll help a little bit here. So 24 times tangent of 40, and that equals, so we get 20.1. For rounding, we look at the 3. 3 is 4 or smaller, so we leave it 20.1. And then we're going to type in 50 here. All right, let's check it. We're good to go. All right, one more of these. Okay, so let's go ahead and start filling in the angle here. So again, 180. We're going to subtract what we're using, which is 43 and 90. So that is 133. Borrow, let's see, we get 7 and 47. So our angle here is 47 degrees. And let's go ahead and start marking up our items here. So we get opposite 43 is B. Hypotenuse, that's always across from the 90. So our hypotenuse in this case is 25. So that tells us we're going to use hypotenuse. So we're going to use sine and cosine in this one because we have our hypotenuse, and that's our non-rounded amount that we're given to start with. So that tells us which two we're going to do. And then we have our adjacent, which, remember, it's the side left over if you're doing it the way I'm doing it, or it connects the angle and the right angle. So the angle you're talking about and the right angle. Okay. So again, I know I'm going to use sine and cosine. I'm just going to start with sine. So sine of 43 equals opposite, which is B, over hypotenuse, which is 25. Well, hey, that makes it easy. B's on top, so I'm just going to multiply both sides by 25. The 25's cancel, so all I have to do is put this into my very nice little calculator here. Scooch this over. Let's close this one. So we end up with 25 times sine of 43 equals. So remember, we're rounding to a tenth. So I'm going to highlight up to a tenth here. Oh, I don't know why I highlighted the whole thing there. Okay. The next number right after tenth is 4. 4 is 4 or smaller. So it just rounds to 17. And this is B, so let's make sure we type it in the right spot, because that was my silly mistake on the last one. It will probably also take it without the 0.0. It may not need that 0.0 at all. So actually, I'm just going to leave it off because we should be able to just put 17 on there. All right, so let's go ahead and do this last piece. So I use sine. The other one that uses hypotenuse is cosine. Remember, we don't want to use any rounded amounts. So we have cosine, which is adjacent, which is A, over hypotenuse, which is still 25. So I'm just going to multiply both sides by 25 again. So it is a little nicer when the variable is on top because it gives you, you don't have to divide by the trigonomic function. You just have to multiply by the side length that you're given. So let's see, we have 25 times cosine of 43 equals, all right, so we run around to the 10th. So 2 is the 10th mark. I have to look at the one right after it. 8 is 5 or bigger. So this is going to round to 18.3 because we'll round up 1. And then we want to type our 47 in. Okay, so they do want the 0.0 in here. Okay, so they were just being a little picky on that one. So they did want the 0.0, but they warned me first before marking wrong. All right, we finished it. Yay.